I've seen stuff in the woods up in the high country, or experienced stuff in the high country back in Arizona that I couldn't explain. And it's I want to be as skeptical as possible, but at the same time, there's stuff that I can't seem to wrap my head around. Or if I do get a quote realistic explanation about it, it's so far fetched. It's like, well, why not just take that extra half step and just go all in on the more paranormal aspect of it.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that, bud. Let me ask you, what you mentioned seeing or experiencing something in the woods. What happened there, man?
So that was actually on my 21st birthday. My buddies and I went camping up north of Prescott, in between somewhere in between Prescott and Flagstaff. And one of my buddies left to go back to Phoenix because he was going to pick up someone who I think changed their mind at the last minute or something and decided they want to come. So it was just me and my other buddy hanging out by the fire. And all of a sudden, we had these two water jugs that were ways away from us. We just left them like 20, 25 feet away for whatever reason. And all of a sudden we start hearing stuff hitting the jugs. And we thought at first it was just, pine cones falling. And it keeps happening. And we see one of the jugs, they weren't all the way full. They were maybe halfway full, a third of the way full or something. And one of the jugs like tips on its side because something got thrown at it. And yeah, and we're like, well, that's clearly not a pine cone at this point. So he was in the military, so he grabbed his semi-auto, and I grabbed my just 22, and we're hanging out waiting for our friends to come back. When they come back, they're like, oh, you guys have just been drinking or whatever, which we weren't. And we're like, no, just sit down and listen and watch those jugs. And sure enough, it kept happening. And they're eventually like, okay, well, it's not pine cones. So me and my buddy had our guns. Our other friend grabbed his 22, and my other friend, I think all he could grab was like a shovel or something. Like, wound up turning the vehicles around and putting the high beams on and just going in the forest to find out what the hell is doing this. And we never found anything, but we did hear very obvious running sounds, which is, and here's the thing, if in my mind, if that was an animal, it would have taken off a long time ago. It would have been gone way before we started going into the woods, because they turned their cars around. The high beams were on. My one friend, for whatever reason, just starts blasting AC/DC. And so, I mean, figure, if we're going to go out, we're going to go out in style. But figure if it was an animal, then whatever it was, whatever kind of animal it was, would have taken off a long time ago. So, when the doors slammed, when the music started, when the high beams came on, it would have taken off a long time ago, not when we start walking into the woods. But we never found anything, never saw any tracks or anything. And I'm not a master huntsman or anything like that, but I've been hunting enough in Arizona to know how to track an animal for the most part. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, that's really interesting, man. You didn't happen to be in the Mogollon Rim area, did you? It
was around the Mogollon Rim, I think. We were a little bit south of it, But I don't know how far south. And I've heard of. Are you alluding to the Mogollon monster?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that for a while now, and I don't know that we would have been considered close enough for that to be a possible encounter. But I'm certainly not ruling it out. I mean, something was out there, something happened, but I have no idea what it was.
Yeah, man, that's really interesting. So the whole the Mogollon monster for me is probably a Sasquatch, and a lot of people give me some flack because they're like, there's no Sasquatch in Arizona, but that is a heavily forested region. And if you actually track the sightings map, there's actually like a length of forest that comes down from the Pacific Northwest and actually curves into Arizona and follows the Mogollon Rim. And so for me, whenever I talk about Sasquatch in Arizona, it's like, it's very possible that there's a couple of them that their territory stretch out into the Mogollon Rim. And, listening to what you just told me it sounds like very primate-like playful behavior. A deer would run off, the second you started blasting AC/DC, that deer would have been long gone. And, so it's very interesting to hear about something that's like kind of just out of sight, that's throwing stuff at your water jugs, knocking them over for fun. That's really weird to me, man. And who knows, man, maybe that's what you ran into that night. But, I guess we'll never truly know. But it's definitely strange either way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just to restate one of your points for everyone listening, because when people think of Arizona, they think strictly of desert. But as well as I do, since we both live there, that the high country does have a good amount of forest. There are logging operations going on up there because there's so many damn trees up in the high country. So for something, some unknown species of hominid or humanoid or however you want to say it, to be surviving up there or living up there, I'm not going to say that I'm 100% in on believing that, but I would not at all be surprised if there was something like that up there. I wouldn't rule that out at all for something like that being up there. It's a heavily forested area. There's lots of canyons. There's lots of little gullies and places for plenty of things to hide up there and never be seen for years, if ever.